Hey everyone, and welcome back to Battleborn. I've got an updated Deande build for you, and this one used to be called Fanatical Juggler, but they got rid of her juggling capabilities, so I'm now calling it Shadow Burst, and it's changed quite dramatically. And on this video, we're going to talk about her abilities, her Helix choices, and the gear I like to bring for the build. So, we'll start off with her passive, the Element of Surprise. For 5 seconds after uncloaking, all of Deande's skills and attacks deal 25% additional damage. So if you're using her stealth aggressively, you're going to get a big damage boost. And at level 5, we're going to augment it, so when we come out of stealth, for 3 seconds, any melee attack we land is going to apply a 3-second slow. So that's going to make it so people can't get away from us, and we're going to secure those kills. Alright, next up we've got her weapon, the Tesserum Warfans. Deande is lethal at both close and long range, using her swift melee combo or deceptive thrown warfans to steal 15% of health damage dealt to her foes. So we've got melee, we've got ranged, and we've got lifesteal on both melee and ranged, which is really nice. Now, one thing to note with her ranged attack. It's a 3-shot combo, so she's going to throw 1 fan with the right hand, then 1 with the left hand, and then she's going to throw 2 fans with both hands. And the fan she throws, or the hand she throws the fan from, causes an arc. So if she throws with the right hand, the fan will go relatively straight for a certain distance, and then it's going to arc towards the right side. Or if she throws with the left hand, it'll arc towards the left side. So it makes it so her fans are only really effective at short to medium range. After that, it makes it much harder to land because that arc, you just have to judge the arc. So you can still hit targets from really far away, but you're going to have to judge that arc. And when she throws the 2 fans, they arc in different directions. So you're not going to get the double hit bonus that you would at medium range if you kept them close together before they arc. So just keep that in mind. You want to use those fans from short to medium range unless you're really good at judging arcs. Alright, and at level 3, we're going to augment the war fans to have 10% more lifesteal, so we're going to get it up to 25%, which is going to help us keep us alive. And at level 7, we're going to increase our melee damage by 18%. Alright, next up we have Hollow Twin, which is on a 28-second cooldown. Cloaks Deande and deploys a decoy that has 20% of her maximum health and does 25% of her damage to fight in her stead for 8 seconds. Upon death or expiry, the decoy explodes for 200 damage. So a couple things to note with this. When you activate Hollow Twin, the Hollow Twin pops out at your location and you shoot backwards by default. And it has 20% of your maximum health, but it also mirrors the percentage of health you're currently at. So let's just say her maximum health was 1,000. That would mean the decoy has a maximum of 200 health. However, if you're at 10% of your maximum health, so that would mean you're at 100 HP, that would mean you would spawn your Hollow Twin at 10% of its maximum health, which would be 20. So just keep in mind that the Hollow Twin is going to spawn with the amount of health, or the percentage of health that you currently have. And we're going to augment Hollow Twin a few times. At level 1, we're going to make it so when we activate Hollow Twin, we no longer dash backwards, but in the direction we're moving. So if we're moving backwards, it'll shoot us backwards. But if we're moving to the side, we'll go to the side. If we're going forward, it'll shoot us forward, etc. And it's going to increase the dash distance by 50%. So this obviously makes you a little more erratic. It makes it hard for the enemy to figure out where you went. And they may confuse you for your Hollow Twin. And it also gives you kind of like a double jump. It can get you up to platforms that you previously couldn't access. At level 2, we're going to increase our decoy damage by 50%. And at level 9, we're going to decrease the cooldown of Hollow Twin by 25%. Alright, next up we have Burst Dash. It has an 18-second cooldown. Deande charges forward, dealing 200 damage. Hit enemies are weakened, lowering their attack damage by 30%. So the important thing to note with Burst Dash is that it's really hard to get used to. When you activate it, she doesn't dash forward right away. There's a slight delay. And then the movement is just kind of jerky. I don't know how else to describe it. It's a really hard skill to learn how to land. And honestly, I still kind of suck with it, but I'm much better than I used to be with practice. And you're likely going to have to practice it a lot to get used to it. You're probably going to whiff it a lot when you first start. But after a while, you'll kind of start to get the hang of it. So at level 4, we're going to augment it so it's going to break our shield. And then half of the shield amount that it broke is going to get converted to extra damage for the attack. At level 6, we're going to increase Burst Dash's damage by 15%. And at level 8, we're going to decrease the cooldown by 25%. Alright, finally, we've got Blink Storm. It's on a 70-second cooldown. Upon activation, Deande unleashes a flurry of 10 strikes directly ahead of her, stunning up to 5 enemies and dealing 68 damage per hit. So, 2 things to note with Blink Storm. The first is it's a high-risk, high-reward ultimate. So when you activate it, there's about a 2-second charge-up period where you're moving your cone around to get your targets in it. And then once it's activated, you're still susceptible to damage and CC effects. And then once it's done, you're kind of stuck in an animation for about a second. And the enemies that you stunned will actually get out of the stun quicker than you will. So they can come and attack you or stun you or whatever. Or their teammates could be waiting for your ultimate to end, and then they'll just CC you and probably kill you. So you need to be very aware of the situation and your placement when you go to use this ability. Also, the damage will be split between the enemies you catch in the ultimate. So if you caught 1 enemy, it's going to take the full damage. If you catch 2 enemies, the damage is going to get split, and so on and so forth. If you catch 5, it'll get split 5 ways. And if you catch 1 enemy, it's a high damage ability used to kill people. If you catch multiple, hopefully it's all players, and it's just an amazing stun on their team, and your teammates can come in and just wipe the floor with them. So it's either a high damage stun, or it's a huge lockdown of the other team. So it has it's multi-use. But high risk, high reward. You put yourself in danger when you use it. Alright, so those are her abilities. Let's jump over to the Helix. I'll explain to you which Helix choices we make, and we'll just go over all of the options. So for level 1, we go to the left, and we pick up Double Trouble. That makes it so when we activate Holo Twin, we no longer go backwards by default. We're going to dash in the direction that we're moving. So if we're moving to the left, it'll shoot us to the left. If we're moving forward, we'll go forward. If we're moving back, we'll shoot backwards. So that allows you more mobility, and you can use it to confuse your enemies so they can't figure out where you are, which is always good. And it also improves the dash distance by 50%, which you can use as like a double jump to access areas you previously couldn't. So it's multifaceted. It's nice for confusing enemies or just dictating where you move, and it's also a mobility move to get you to places you couldn't get before. You can go up the middle with Wonder Twins. That makes it so you get 25% lifesteal off your Holo Twins damage. However, it does not count for the explosion at the end. So that is only the melee and ranged attacks of the Holo Twin, not the explosion. And then there's also Ground Zero on the right, where you turn your Burst Dash into an AoE. So AoEs are nice. It's good for minion clearing. It's good for applying weakness to multiple targets or just dealing damage to an area. It's also really good if you're really, really bad at landing Burst Dash, which is not unlikely for new players. But we're assuming that you can land the Burst Dash, so we go to the left with Double Trouble. Alright, next up, we go to the left. With all safeties off, we increase Holo Twin decoy damage by 50%, which is good. We want that to do as much damage as possible. You could go to the right and increase its health, but they're already so squishy, I don't really see the point in this. I'd much rather have the damage. Level 3, we go to the right with Leechsteel. That adds 10% more lifesteal to our melee and ranged attacks. And because I don't use any regen gear with this build, I like that option for more sustain. However, I've had an internal struggle with myself for a while over this one. I do like the left choice as well, increasing the Throne Warfan's damage by 18%. Also a very good choice. If I had a healer with me, if I was prone to being pre-mades and had a healer, I would totally go to the left. But that's not my normal situation, so that's why I go to the right. And you can also go up the middle with Uppercut and add an uppercut to your melee combo, which is going to apply a wound to enemies hit with it. However, it's important to note that that slows down your melee combo and lowers your melee DPS. So just be aware of that. All right, level 4, we go to the left, making our burst dash very powerful, but a little risky with calculated risk. So whenever we use burst dash, it's going to destroy our shield and convert the shield's damage, half of the shield's amount that we consumed, into damage for the burst dash. So blow up the shield to increase burst dash's damage. The other option is to go with drain dash, where half of the damage you deal by burst dash is returned as health. The only reason I would take that is if you decided to go with the AoE on level 1. Otherwise, I don't think it's really worth it. So if you're going with a single target, I would go with calculated risk, like we are for this build. If you're going for AoE, I would go with the drain dash. All right, next up, we go to the left for level 5 with Silent Strike. Now when we uncloak, our melee attacks will apply a 3-second slow duration for 3 seconds. So come out of cloak, you've got 3 seconds of slowing melee attacks that will apply a 3-second slow. So essentially 6 seconds of slow if you land a melee attack right as those 3 seconds are ending. Now the other options, you can get Beast of Momentum. Killing an enemy increases Deande's movement speed by 10% for 5 seconds. I don't really find much of a use for that one. And then we've got Roguelike. For 3 seconds after uncloaking, Deande's melee strikes to an enemy's back deal additional damage, plus 25%. Now that does not count for Burst Dash, which is the only reason I don't like that. It's only your regular melee attacks, not your skills. So I tend to not like that one because I would much rather have the slow so they can't get away from me. Without the slow, they're just going to run away if they're a smart player, and you're not going to be able to catch them. All right, level 6, we go to the left. Increase Burst Dash's damage because that's sort of the bread and butter for this build. Should be pretty self-explanatory. Now, the other options are interesting, though. You can go up the middle with Ire's Echo. That's going to increase the explosion damage of the Holo Twin by 15%, and it's going to apply a slow when they do explode. So you can kind of use this to stack your slow with Silent Strike. So if you wanted to, you could activate your Holo Twin and then sort of just hang out while your Holo Twin attacks your target. It'll go in, explode, and get them slowed. And then you can come out of stealth, hit them with Burst Dash or whatever you're going to do, and then re-slow them with Silent Strike. Or you can come out of stealth early, hit them with Silent Strike. That'll get them slowed. And then as soon as Silent Strike, or hopefully soon after Silent Strike is about to wear off, the clone will come in, get itself killed, explode, and get them re-slowed. So there's various uses for it. It's definitely an interesting option, but not one we take for this build. And then there's also Escape Plan on the right. Activating your Holo Twin increases Deande's movement speed for a brief time, 30% for 5 seconds. Good for chasing people and good for escaping. I don't particularly like it because I want to increase Burst Dash's damage and just get people dead, but it's certainly a viable option. All right, level 7, I like both of these, to be honest, but I tend to prefer Fan of War on the left and increase my melee damage by 18% by default. The culling is really good if you're really, really consistent on landing Burst Dash and good at just finishing people off super quick, because Burst Dash is going to weaken them, and then you're going to get 23% increased damage instead of 18. Plus, it'll also affect your ultimate. So, and it'll also affect your Holo Twin if it's still alive. So it increases all damage by 23% rather than just your melee. So you can burst dash and then follow it up with an ultimate that's going to hit 23% harder, and that is nasty. But I'm not that consistent with landing burst dash, so I go to the left with Fan of War. Alright, next up, we've got level 8. We go to the right and decrease burst dash's cooldown by 25%. You can also go to the left and increase the dash distance, but I don't like that one. It's great for closing the gap with people, but I already have a hard time landing burst dash, and increasing the distance just kind of makes it harder for me and just even more awkward. So I much prefer to just reduce the cooldown, have more chances at landing it. Level 9, we go to the left and decrease Holo Twin's cooldown by 25%, and that is good for obvious reasons. It gets us more chances to escape or be aggressive with the enemy, get more twins out there, and confuse people. So that's what I like to do. You can go up the middle and make it so a portion of damage dealt by burst dash penetrates shields. So if you're attacking full HP and full shield targets, you can bypass that and maybe just blow up the really squishy targets like Arendi and such. Although I don't find that to be a situation that occurs all that often. I can just blow right through the shield and everything. I don't really need to bypass it. And you can also go to the right and increase Holo Twins' lifetime by 7 seconds. But they die so quick anyway, I don't see any point in doing that. So I go to the left. And finally on level 10, I go to the left and get Doppelgangup. That makes it so you spawn a decoy when you activate your ultimate, which is awesome. And pretty self-explanatory why that is good. Gathering Storm on the right is terrible. Killing a minor enemy with Blink Storm refunds 5 seconds to the skill's cooldown. Killing a major enemy refunds 10 seconds of the cooldown. And it only works up to 10 seconds max. It's a long cooldown. 10 seconds makes it 60 instead of 70. It's not always the best skill to actually kill things. Usually you're just stunning things for your teammates. So I don't know. Spawning a twin is just infinitely more valuable in my opinion. And pretty much nobody picks Gathering Storm, and there's a good reason for that. Alright, so those are the Helix choices I make. Finally, let's go over to the gear. And as usual, I've got an expensive set for for Incursion and Meltdown. I've got a set for Face Off, and I've got a set for Capture. So we'll start off with Incursion and Meltdown. First off, we have this Amplifying Internal Capacitor. It's going to increase our shield strength by 139 and increase our skill damage by 5.43%. So we want to increase our shield strength because we use calculated risk, and that's going to increase burst dash's damage because our shield is stronger. And skill damage is also going to increase burst dashes and every skill's damage, which is also very good. Next up, we've got Bola's Target Finder, 9.1% skill damage, 5.04% attack speed, and damaging enemies with skills increases damage dealt to them by 5.6%. for 10 seconds, and just keep in mind that the Holo Twins count as skill damage. So, if you activate your Holo Twin, they do damage to the target you're wanting to hit with your burst dash, then they're going to take an extra 5.6% damage, which is great. We want to get that burst dash as high as possible. And finally, we go with the Pacifier. 9.1% attack damage, another increase to our maximum shield strength, and any enemies we damage have their attack damage lowered by 10% for 5 seconds. This stacks with the weaken from burst dash, so that's going to get you up to 40%. They're going to be hitting you like wet noodles. It's great. All right, next up, we've got the face-off set. Amplifying Internal Capacitor again. We've got a skill damage item, the Cognitive Predictor, and a white attack damage item, the Duelist Glove. 9.1% attack damage. And then finally for Capture, we go with the Erratic Internal Capacitor. Maximum shield strength at the cost of reload speed, which won't affect us. And we've got skill damage again and attack damage again. Alright, so there you go. Those are her abilities, her Helix choices, and the gear I like to bring. So over the next couple days, I'm going to release some matches with the build so you can get a handle for the level progression, and I can give you some tips as I play. And hopefully that'll help you get a grasp on it. But anyways, that's going to do it for this video. So thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.